This podcast will fail. Of this, I'm pretty sure. Well, you might prove me wrong. Who knows? So on to episode 3. I find myself back in the front seat of the car on my lunch hour here. And actually, upon retrospect, realized why the audio from episode 1 sounded the way it did, because I didn't have the quote-unquote microphone portion of the phone actually pointed at my face. The phone was sort of propped up by the steering wheel and the dashboard, which was kind of stupid because then my voice would have to carry around the car, I guess, and pick up that hollow sound. So I have the thing pointed at my mouth, as one who creates audio and video would think you would point the microphone at your mouth today to see how this sounds. So yesterday I once again had a little bit of a revelation, which has been interesting to me. I know I'm only 3 episodes and an episode 0 into this now, but this exploration of my creative life has been interesting to sit here and talk effectively to myself about what I do, what I've done, and the reasons why. And I had for years not even thought about the fact that 20 years ago I wrote a fiction novel, and it was horrible, and it never got published, and nor would it. Explored all that yesterday, and that's all well and good. And yesterday's audio, by the way, was once again atrocious because I was walking around outside, and the environment and the wind and everything else, my breathing was ridiculous. I was able to find an app with a noise reduction that weeded out a lot of just my own giant lungs hissing and wheezing as I talk. So hopefully when I take a breath in here in this setting, it doesn't come on too strong. But nonetheless, I thought that I can't just toss that audio away. I can't. The conversation with myself was far too spontaneous, and to try and recreate that moment would have been completely disingenuous. So I kept it and did a little bit of cleaning up, removed a whole bunch of extraneous mouth noises that don't need to be there, and tidied up some of the pacing. But now, in the end, I was actually surprisingly, I guess I could say, satisfied with the quality of the recording. So today, I want to pick up the thread where I left off, and now we've moved on beyond the early 2000s, first couple of years of not really doing anything after that failed attempt at writing a book. We got to 2005. And in 2005, I made my first real foray into trying to create something that would make me famous. And I say that all carefully and picking each word, because I'm trying to make sure that I'm not deceiving myself in any way, and trying to make sure that I'm not trying to embellish or play with the terminology that I'm using, because it's very easy for me to kind of continue down the road of self-deprecation that says, well, no, I wasn't really, what I was really, no, jerk off. What you were doing was trying to get famous. That's just what it is. So let me tell you the story of my first foray into internet radio. So at the time, in 2005, I was working as an account executive. I was effectively a fancy version of a salesperson. My job was to drive all over the state and visit with mortgage bankers and brokers and generate loans and business and make a lot of money, which I kind of did, actually. 2005 was just the start of it, but in those years, I spent a lot of time driving, like a lot of time driving, as any road warrior salesperson does, I kept company with Sirius XM Radio and one Mr. Howard Stern. And I was pretty deep into his show at that point. I liked it. I followed the characters. I don't know. I get that there's a lot of folks that just look upon it as crass and that there's no real value. But I saw a lot there and heard a lot there. And when I listened, I found myself sitting there thinking back to that conversation with that radio DJ in that studio and going, man, it's so cool. Like, to be able to sit there and talk and have people listen and have guests and have co-hosts and have all this stuff. So one day on the Howard Stern show, one of his interview guests, is a young woman by the name of Tracy Buttafuoco. Now, depending on your age and where you live and what your experience is, the name Buttafuoco came up several times in the 80s and 90s because of a torrid tabloid affair where this Joey Buttafuoco apparently murdered the husband of his mistress, and it was all a big thing, right? So this was a big news story in the 80s and 90s. Okay, cool. So the daughter is a model, and now she's a business owner and something else, and she's on Howard Stern's show being interviewed. And I'll never forget, I'm barreling down the interstate highway at 70 miles an hour, and I'm listening to this interview. And he says to her, Howard Stern says, "Okay, so Tracy, what are you doing right now? What are you working on? What's going on?" And she says some words that changed the trajectory of my creative life. She says, "Oh, I'm working for a website that lets anyone, anywhere, host their own radio show live." I almost drove off the road. Literally. It hit me like a sledgehammer. Like, instantly understood and recognized what she was saying in the context of what she was saying and what it meant. All of a sudden flooded me with the same moment of, I can do this. I can do this. I have to do this. I want to do this. Oh my God. So here I am with my foot on the accelerator, still barreling down the road, fumbling for a piece of paper or something, a scrap piece of paper to write with it. I need a pen or pencil. There's got to be something. I'm trying to hold the steering wheel steady. I'm trying to maintain speed and not cause an accident in the middle of the highway, so I can write down the name of this website that she says on the air. And it was nowlive.com, and it was a new thing. So again, you think about today. Here we are in 2020, and everybody can broadcast themselves everywhere they go, anytime they want. I mean, broadcasting yourself is ubiquitous with our life and society in today's world. It just is. Everyone has a device in their pocket with a camera and an internet connection, and at any point you can push a live button on one of dozens and dozens and dozens of different platforms to transmit your voice and your image, and people can watch it. This was all unheard of in 2005. There were people doing it. There was a small underground of folks that were kind of hooking up or rough coding streaming servers through websites, and Now Live was the first one to say, all right, we can make this an open access for people because there's a business model there. We can get advertisers and run ads, and people will come and produce the content, and people will come and listen to the content while they're producing their own content. And in a lot of ways, to me, it was one of the first forays into the modern version of what we see on platforms like Instagram and Twitter, where everybody's producing something, and everybody's trying to get everybody else that's producing something to watch and to listen and to look. It was so unbelievably rudimentary. There were no webcams at the moment. That was a thing that came up later. There was just this ability to, I think at first, actually dial in on an 800 number. So I literally had like a 1990s home telephone headset sitting in front of my laptop, and I was speaking from a foot or two away, hosting a show, playing songs like a radio DJ, and talking about topics and going through segments, and I was off like a shot, man. I just, God, it just, and it worked, and people listened, and people paid attention, and people knew the name. I had a stage name. Much as I've told you, it doesn't matter who I am. It doesn't matter what my real name is. It doesn't matter what my stage name was either. But I had a stage name that was starting to gather a little bit of notoriety on at least a small scale by today's standards. But people were showing up every single Saturday night, and they were listening, and they were playing along, and they were in the chat room, and they were talking, and they were asking questions, and they were anxiously awaiting updates and segments, and it grew. And before long, one of these people that was listening approached me separately and emailed me and said, "Hey man, I would love to be a co-host." And lickety split, I had a co-host, and it was cool as hell, and we played off of each other. And we started having a rogues gallery cast of characters that were calling in, and the technology improved, and now we did have TCP/IP connections, and now we were technically streaming. And then not too long after that, there were webcams, and the idea of a modern day Zoom call, we were doing this stuff when it was brand new, and we were bringing hundreds of people every Saturday night to watch and listen and laugh and play and play, and everybody just played along, and it was great. And man, it was a highlight. And I built a website. I learned coding, and I built a website around it. And before long after that, I had built friendships with other people that were hosting shows. And now I've got these connections that are almost something like a network. And my people are going to watch their shows, and their people are coming to watch ours. And it was amazing. And it was like the first taste of recognition. I can't say it was fame. It wasn't fame, right? It wasn't thousands of people. It wasn't tens of thousands of people, right? I never had 1 million views. But in my mind, and in a certain small scale, it worked. And it was great for 4 years. Now, all 4 years weren't great. About 2.5 to 3 years in, the co-host and I fell out, and he effectively walked away. He had his own things in life to deal with, and he wasn't really there mentally and emotionally, and years later now I understand it, and I'm friends with him again to this day, but he had to walk away, and that hurt. We had by that time picked up a second co-host, once again another listener, someone who was actually a friend of my wife's that had come and listened to the show and really got into it regularly, and next thing I know becomes a second co-host. So she stepped up to the plate, and she took over that primary co-host responsibility, and she and I went on again for another however many months, 5-6 months. And even then, at that point, she said, "Look, this is your dream. This is not my dream. I'm having fun, but I've got other things going on. I've got a family. I've got a blog. I've got other stuff I'm doing." And she walked away too. And again, I don't blame her. Again, I'm still friends to this day. I understand that it's hard for people to invest in someone else's dream when it's not really benefiting them personally. I understand that. I get it. So at the end of it, by the end of the 4th year, my wife had actually assumed full-time co-hosting responsibilities. But you see, I've said in the last episode or two that there gets to be a moment of realization that you're playing to an ever emptying room. That less and less people are showing up every single week. That new people are not showing up. That you get down to this point where it's the same 5 to 10 people every single week. And it starts to weigh on you a little bit. And you start to think, or at least I did, I'm putting in hours of work every single week at night, after work, after dinner, after homework, after the kids are in bed. I'm sitting up and I'm trying to produce content, and I'm trying to book guests, and I'm trying to write segments, and I'm trying to, make this whole thing work. Literally hours and hours of prep work every single week for 2 hours of content that nobody's watching, nobody's listening to. And so I made a decision to stop. I said, you know what? I don't have anything else to say, right? I've run out of ideas. I've run out of motivation and inspiration. I'm repeating things. I'm doing the same dumb crap we were doing 4 years ago and trying to make it fresh and new, and it wasn't fresh and new. The network had grown up around me, right? I still had this internet radio station that I had built, a website, and I had a whole lineup of other shows and DJs who were broadcasting on the site and trying to bring traffic in. But even that, it wasn't really going anywhere. Nobody was doing gangbuster business. Now Live was way long gone. We had gone through 5-6 different streaming platforms after Now Live went belly up, and we did Ustream, and we did Blog TV, and we did a couple of other ones that I don't even remember anymore. I made a lot of good friends, and I'm still friends with a lot of those people today, but it was obvious that it wasn't going anywhere. And about a year and a half after I hung up the microphone and hung up the headphones, and again, it was 2010 that I said, thank you, everybody. It's been 4 years. It's been 200 shows, but we have reached the end, and this is the end. We're signing off. Goodbye. And I I ended the show. Year and a half later, the website had petered to the point where I said, okay, guys, we're done, and shut down the website. And that was it. That was the first taste of quote unquote glory. And that was the first sting of loss and defeat. And I didn't do anything for a long time. After that. I don't know that there was any cathartic realization in telling that story today, but I know that I needed to tell it, and I did, and I'm sure that absolutely nobody listened to it. And if somebody happened to listen to it and you're still here, I appreciate you. But that's going to do for this. I think that's everything I needed to say in this one. So I will simply say, we'll talk to you next time. Have a good day.